Hello guys, good morning. Good morning.
Morning, sir.
Hintayin lang natin sila, no?
Morning, sir.
Good morning.
Morning, sir.
Good morning. Okay, good morning guys. So basically, medyo nagkakaproblema ako sa signal kanina. So ang gagawin natin is I'm going to record. I-record ko yung lecture natin para nang sa ganun ay in case na magkaroon tayo ng problema, technicalities sa ating presentation and sa ating lecture is pwede pa rin nating mapanood yung buong lecture kapag in-upload ko na siya. No? So, today's topic guys will be therapeutic modalities. Wait lang, hindi pa lumalabas yung aking presentation. So, therapeutic modalities, nagkaroon na tayo ng brief introduction to the subject matter. So, we presented the concept of therapeutic modalities doon sa based doon sa TOS or based doon sa inisyo nila na guidelines with regards to the content of the lecture, no? So ngayon, we are going to discuss our topic based naman dito sa ating reference. So I was able to get a hand of the reference, no? Isang reference natin, a textbook for a criminology student which talks about therapeutic modalities, and it's very new, no? Bago siya. So I was surprised that our first topic for this lecture will be more on human rights as an introductory part of the lecture. Okay? Nakikita niyo yung presentation ko guys? Hindi. Bakit ayaw magpakita? Hindi. Wait lang. Bakit ay?
Wala, sir.
Wala, sir.
Sige. Okay. Yan. I'm going to turn off my camera muna para baka mahina yung signal natin. Okay, so with regards to therapeutic modalities, we are going to talk about the following topic. No? Nagulat ako nung nakita ko that part of the lecture will be talking about the concept of human rights. No? So basically, human rights naman was discussed already doon sa sa third year subject if we're following the same curriculum as we were noon nung sa ibang school pa ako nagtuturo. So under therapeutic modalities, I realized that really it is important for us to talk about the concept of human rights education kasi we're basically talking about therapeutic modalities. We're basically dealing with person deprived of their liberty o yung mga PDL natin tinatawag, or in short, yung mga tao nasa loob ng ating mga piitan. Okay? So at the end of the lecture, since module 1 we're talking about the law on human rights, no? So at the end of the lecture, by the way, I'm using my reference from the two author, Jail Inspector R.J. Marcaida Quasay and JO1 Renor Narca Apela. So they are the author of the book that I'm using, and I would just like to recognize them as my references. Okay, so for the learning objectives, we have here to gain some knowledge about the general nature of the definition of human rights, acquaint the sources and the foundation of human rights law, and understand the meaning and concept of civil and political rights. So I do believe we have a a short introduction already with regards to this subject topic. But for today, I think we should go over them. So this should not confuse you, and our subject is therapeutic modality, but as part of the introduction, we should talk about the law on human rights and how did human rights comes about. Okay, so let us first define what is human rights. Now, human rights discusses those rights which are inherent in our nature and without which we cannot live as a human being. So basically, we have a lot of human rights or yung tinatawag nating fundamental or foundational rights. No? So, majority of them are rights that protects those things that should be protected because we are human being. So human rights allows us to develop and use our human qualities such as our intelligence, talents, and conscience, and to satisfy our spiritual and other needs. So we have here the different inalienable rights that we have. We have the right to life, no? Right to dignity, right to self-development, and all of these rights makes us human being. So in short, no, when we talk about human rights, it's basically the rights that you have because you are a human being. No, ito yung mga karapatan na meron tayo dahil tayo ay human being. So that is what human rights shortly means. Now, if we're going to talk about the basic characteristic of human rights, we have here a lot of them. No? We have here 7 of the basic characteristic of human rights, but I believe there are more if we are going to use some other references. Now, the first characteristic of human rights is inherent. Now, ibig sabihin, the human rights that we have, no, yung karapatang pantao natin is not granted by any person or authority. It's not granted by our Philippine Constitution. It's not granted by our Bible. It's not granted by anyone. Now, hindi ito binigay ng kahit ng isang tao lamang o hindi ito binigay ng mga nasa katungkulan. Human rights is present. The mere fact that we are already perceived as a human being. I think dito nagkakaroon ng talo-talo actually with regards to the conception of human rights. Kasi una sa lahat, kailan masasabi na ng isang organism, no, is already a human being. No, kailan natin masasabi na ang isang bagay or isang object na yun is tao na siya. No? Kasi remember, we have yung tinatawag nating natural person and we have juridical person. Ibig sabihin, pag you have juridical person, then you are entitled also of the rights of a human being. No? Pero kailan nga ba natin masasabi na ang isang bagay o isang tao is tao na? No? Magsisimula yan doon sa conception pa lang. Habang pinagbubuntis pa lang yung isang tao, no? Ano ba yung basihan natin bago natin masabi na tao na yan? Do we need halimbawa yung mga organs is kailangan bang totally developed na or starting to develop na bago natin sabihin that yung fetus na yan is already a human being and he is accorded of the different human rights. No? So yun yung mga issues natin with regards to this. Now, some other references sabi nga is human being na yung isang fetus, no? Kapag siya ay capable na to live on his own, no? Kung kaya niya nang mabuhay na mag-isa without the support of any instrument, without the support of any gadget and so on. So, yun yung kanilang pananaw with regards to human being na magiging na considered as tao ka na kapag hindi mo na kailangan ng apparatus at you can live individually from your parent or from your mother rather, na? So kung kaya mo nang mabuhay sa labas ng sinapupunan ng iyong mother habang ikaw ay pinagbubuntis nang walang tulong ng instrument or other gadgets that can prolong or secure you, no? Then pwede ka nang may considered as human being. But then my question for that is that bakit pinaparusahan ang abortion if that's the case? So ibig sabihin, even if you are just 1 month na pa lamang pregnancy na doon sa tiyan, no, habang kahit ikaw ay 1 month old pa lamang doon sa tiyan, is you are already being protected against being taken away of your human rights, no? Kasi pinoprotektahan ka na sa pag-abort sa'yo as a fetus pa lamang. So I think if we're going to look at it, they have more consideration actually, no, to that. Ibig sabihin is hindi lamang yung pag-develop ng organs or pagiging capable ng isang organism na makaya nang mag-survive within its own self, no, ang basihan ng human rights, kundi the mere conception, the mere na nabuo na yung isang fetus na yan is already considered as human being, and he is already entitled of the very fundamental rights of human being, which is the right to life. So ibig sabihin, pinoprotektahan niya yung kanyang buhay sa sinapupunan pa lamang. So I can safely say that human rights is already given even if you are just at the first month of pregnancy, no? Kasi pinaparusahan na yan. Our abortion law does not really discriminate such thing. Basta buntis, pinalaglag, that is already considered as a crime, and that is already considered as a violation of human rights. Okay? So inherent, hindi pagkapanganak, pagkabuo pa lang natin sa sinapupunan ng ating mga magulang, we are already entitled of human rights. So no one had given that to us, no? Hindi sinabi that from now on, hindi sinabi ng batas or ng president natin that from now on you are entitled of the rights to life, but rather it is inherent for all human beings the moment that they are conceived, that they are produced. Tama ba? Okay? So number 2 of the characteristic of human rights is fundamental. Now without them, it's very fundamental. That without human rights, the life and dignity of man will be meaningless, no? So kung wala tayong tinatawag na human rights, then what is the essence of life and what is the essence of dignity, no? If we are not protected by our life, ibig sabihin is wala namang nagbabawal na tayo ay patayin, na tayo ay bastusin, na tayo ay pagnakawan, then definitely what is the essence of being a human being? Now, we are no longer considered as human being but merely an object, no? Merely an object or merely an animal if that's the case. So I think because we have human rights and because we have the respect to life and dignity, that makes us more human as possible. Now, tignan nyo ang mga hayop, mga object, mga halaman. They don't have such rights as we do, and that is why we perceive them as less than us. That's true, ano? Mas mababang uri kaysa sa atin kasi nga we don't have the same rights as we are not respected at the same rights. So they are not do we respect the dignity of other organisms such as plants, such as animals, and so on? No, we do. No, we don't. No. Do we respect their rights as we do? No, some respect their rights, no, sa mga domesticated animals, but others, they're just killing them for food. No? So without these rights, our existence as human being is considered or will be considered as meaningless. Okay? Next is we have here inalienable, which means that it cannot be rightfully taken away from an individual. Our human rights cannot be given away from an individual, given away for free from an individual, and cannot be given away or forfeited. No? So our rights cannot be forfeited. That's the point that I wanted to make. Hindi pwedeng i-take nila ang ating human rights and i-forfeit nila. Ibig sabihin, even our law really does not have the authority to take away life if we are really considering human rights as serious as it should be. Now, but then the different countries had made a way to go over this, and they have made an exemption. No? Nagbigay sila ng exemption towards this na pwedeng i-forfeit, no? Ang iyong fundamental rights, such as the right to life, if you are already in a serious violation of the laws that we have. Hence, the creation of the death penalty as a capital punishment for a crime in other countries. But luckily, no, dito sa bansa natin, I think it is lucky. No? However, others, advocates of death penalty, don't see it this way. No? Ang iba kasi ang pananaw nila is that death penalty should be the way of how do we call this, deterring, no? It's a good deterrence according to other individuals, other groups that promotes the death penalty as a form of capital punishment. No? They believe that it can deter criminality. However, if we are looking at the basic concept of human rights, then I think that's not the case. That human rights should never be forfeited, no, in whatever case it is. No? It cannot be given away or forfeited in any other, in whatever possible circumstances that is. So we should look into human rights as inalienable rights, and hindi mo siya pwedeng kunin, no? Hindi mo siya pwedeng agawin sa kahit sino man, regardless of the circumstances, even if that is already considered as a consequence of a serious violation of a crime. No? So different groups have different views with regards to the concept of human rights as inalienable. No, kasi kung titignan natin sa ating batas, meron talaga doon na kung saan is kapag ikaw ay nag-commit ng crime, some of your fundamental rights, your civil rights, specifically your political rights are being suspended, are being forfeited because you have committed a crime. So that is, I think, can be reasoned out through yung tinatawag nating social contract. Siyempre, meron tayong social contract na tinatawag na kung saan ikaw bilang human being ay dapat protektahan ng ating government, ng ating community. However, you have the responsibility also to follow or obey the different or existing laws and regulations of our society. So it's a give and take relationship. You will be protected by our society if you are going to follow or obey the existing rules and regulations of the society. But if you're not going to obey or follow, then definitely the society is against you. Therefore, they have criminalization, they have punishment and laws and so on. Okay? So that's with regards to inalienable. Now we have also imprescriptible, which means that cannot be lost even if man fails to use or assert them, even by long passage of time. So if you are not going to claim it, it will not expire. Now, unlike yung mga iba na kung saan kapag hindi mo ginamit, di ba nawawala? Nawawala or napapawalang bisa. Okay? But human rights is not the same. Hindi mo pwede sabihin, okay, expired na ang yung human rights because you have not claimed or used your human rights for so long, or hindi mo naman alam that those are your rights, that it does not mean that you should not enjoy the protection of such human rights. So hindi siya magpre-prescribe. Okay? So even if you are not using it, hindi mo ginagamit, hindi mo napakinabangan for a very long time, human rights still remains the same. Human rights is still within you no matter what the circumstances are. Okay? So let's say for example, yan nga, di ba? Nakulong ka for a very long time, then later on is nakalaya ka na. So all of your rights will be restored. But it doesn't mean that it had already prescribed kasi hindi mo na nagamit. That's not the case. It will never prescribe, it will never be expired. Human rights is still there whether you use it, you assert it or not for a long time. Okay? Now we also have here the indivisible. no? Characteristic of human rights, meaning that hindi siya pwedeng ma-divide. It's not because you enjoy already some of your rights, then your other rights will be invalidated. That's not the case, ano? Whatever is accorded to one human being is accorded to all. Yun ang concept niya. Na kung saan kung ano ang human rights na meron ng isang tao ay yun din ang human rights na meron sa lahat ng tao regardless of different circumstances that we have. Now, it cannot be denied na kapag halimbawa is you are already enjoying your rights, your other rights, no? It's indivisible. Hindi siya pwedeng i-divide na pwedeng magkaroon tayo ng waiver na kung ito ay kinuha mo like for example, if you are enjoying your right your civil rights already, then you will not enjoy already your other rights, no? Kumbaga papiliin mo yung isang tao, anong gusto mo? You're going to enjoy your statutory rights or you're going to enjoy your constitutional rights. Just choose one. That's not the case for human rights, ano? Whatever is the existing human rights, then we should all enjoy that rights at the same time regardless of what rights are we enjoying, okay? Okay, so we have here the universality, no? So universal, human rights is universal as it applies irrespective to one's origin, status, or condition or place when one lives. So all of us should enjoy the different rights that we have regardless of where we are from, who we are, what we belong, no? And so on. So lahat tayo ay nag-enjoy ng rights natin, such as rights to live. If we're enjoying our right to live or right to life here in Philippines, then those from countries such as ano ba yung mga bansa natin na kung saan they're experiencing a lot of wars, no? They should enjoy it too, no? Hindi porket Pilipino ka, ikaw lang mag-enjoy ng right to life, yung mga Amerikano lang mag-enjoy ng right to life, pero yung mga African, they should not enjoy the right to life. That's not the case, no? If we as a Christian is enjoying our right to life, then the Muslim countries should also enjoy the right to life. That's the case with regards to this, ano? Hindi pwedeng ang human rights should apply only into a specific group or a specific country or specific subdivision and so on. So hindi ganon. It's universal in application. Our fundamental rights should be enjoyed by all regardless of their origin, status, condition, place, and other factors. Okay? Interdependent. No? Our human rights is interdependent. The fulfillment of or exercise of one cannot be or had without the realization of others. So, human rights is definitely interdependent. Hindi dahil sa you are not enjoying your political rights is at the same time you should not enjoy all your civil rights. So hindi ganun. If your political rights are suspended, hindi ibig sabihin that your other rights will be suspended also. So they should be interdependent, na hindi sila definitely nakadepende lamang if you have this right, then you should enjoy this right. That's not the case, ano? All of us should enjoy the different rights that we have regardless of what rights are being suspended or what rights are being forfeited. So our rights should be interdependent from each other, no? Hindi kailangang meron muna yung isa bago mo ma-enjoy yung isa pang rights na yan. Okay? So those are the basic characteristic of human rights, and I do believe there's more onto this if you're just going to look into the different references that we have. Okay? So lahat yan importante, ano? You should remember that human rights is inherent, it is given already at birth pa lamang or doon pa lamang sa conception, sa sinapupunan pa lamang, you are already entitled of your human rights or fundamental rights. Fundamental rights is very important, that without them, we are meaningless as a human being. Okay? Inalienable, it means that it cannot be taken away from us, and we should be able to enjoy it without the worry of being forfeited. No? Imprescriptible, no? It will not expire. Even if you're not going to enjoy your rights for a long time, it will not. Indivisible, it cannot be divided. No? Universal, it applies irrespective of every or of the group which the human being belongs, no? It is also interdependent. Okay, tandaan natin yan, napakahalaga niyan. Okay, so we have here the human rights principle. Human rights principle talks about the dignity of man, and human life is considered as inviolable. Now, uh, from the dignity of man, it's derived the right of every person to free development of his personality, and a legitimate state should exist to assure that the discharge of the governmental function and the dignity that is the bright right of every human being is duly safeguarded. So we have human rights now, and the duty of the protection of human rights is relies on to the existing government. That's why it's a give and take. We respect the government that we have, and they respect our human rights. So we have a lot of However, I think we should consider this also as an issue with regards to the concept of human rights, kasi most of human rights are really being committed, or most of human rights violations are really being committed by the government against their subjects, no? Yun yung dapat tignan natin. Bakit kaya karamihan ng human rights violations is nanggagaling mismo sa government, which is or which should have the duty to protect the human rights of all their subject, na? Yun yung tanong, bakit kaya ganon? But I'm not saying that the current government do such, but what we are really observing in a global perspective is a lot of issues on human rights are really a violation coming from the government side itself, no? Unless kasi kung titignan mo yung mga war, yung mga when the government is state of war, there are a lot of violations to that, no? Pagdating sa mga circumstances such as the exercise of the political rights, no? Syempre involved na naman diyan ang government natin. That really is catching our attention kung bakit kaya ganun, that instead of the government protecting the human rights of their subject, of their citizen, bakit karamihan ng human rights violation are coming from the government itself. Okay, but then now you must remember that it's not just the government who can violate the human rights of each and every individual. Even private individual, even private groups can do violate human rights, no, of each and every individual. Isipin mo na lang na kapag ang isang tao pumatay, nagnakaw, pinagsamantalahan ng isang tao, ng kanyang kapwa-tao, definitely he is not just violating the laws of the land, but also violating the different human rights that is accorded to that victim. Okay? We also have here the classification of rights, no? Meron tayong classification of rights here. Natural rights, ito yung mga God-given rights. They are acknowledged by everybody to be morally good, no? Unwritten but prevails as norms of the society. I would like to just have a direct view into this. Hindi sabi natural rights are all God-given rights, because we should also consider that that there are a lot of beliefs and religions, and yes, beliefs that we should consider, and it's not only the Christian or the Muslims and so on. So marami tayong pananaw with regards to this. To correctly define natural rights, I think this is yung mga tinatawag natin humanistic rights that we have, na it's part of the social contract, because we know that without this we will not prosper as a society. That's why we respect it. So like for example, the rights to life, that's basically the fundamental rights that we have, no? That is not accorded by anyone, but rather it is a common, no? It is a common sense rights, no? It is unwritten, it is prevailing as norms in our society as a whole. Okay? Then we also have here constitutional rights that are conferred or protected by the Constitution and which cannot be modified or taken away by law-making body. So, we have here Constitution, no? And sabi nga natin, Constitution is the highest law of the land, no? That no law should be created that will contradict what is written in the Constitution. So, our constitutional rights are rights that protect us as a citizen, and it was given by our Constitution, by our existing government. The modification of such should not be done, no, by any law-making body unless they are going to revise the entire Constitution as it is. No? So para baguhin ang nilalaman ng isang Constitution ay dapat baguhin ang mismong Constitution. No? Hindi dapat gumawa ng kahit anong batas na kung saan it will contradict the content of the Constitution, such as, for example, a good example for this, if the Constitution prohibits the taking away of life, respect life as fundamental rights of every human being, then no law should able to exist. No? Walang dapat batas na mag-exist na kung saan is pinapayagan ang pagkitil ng buhay because there is already a violation of the constitutional rights of each and every human being, which is the right to life. So, ganun yun guys. No? Kung sabi ng Constitution, nire-respeto nito ang karapatan ng bawat isang mabuhay. So, wala dapat batas na magagawa na kung saan is kumikitil or kikitil sa buhay ng kahit sino mang tao. Okay? So that's the very concept of constitutional rights as the fundamental rights or the highest law of the land. Okay? So we have also here the statutory rights. What is the statutory rights and how it is different from constitutional rights? So tandaan natin na pag sinabi natin constitutional rights, it is conferred by the Constitution. It is conferred and protected by the Philippine Constitution. Ibig sabihin, binigay yan ng Constitution at pinoprotektahan yan ng ating Constitution. But statutory rights naman, these are provided by law promulgated by the law-making body. And they may be abolished by the body that created them. So unlike sa Constitution, which cannot be taken away, cannot be modified unless you change the entire Constitution, ang statutory rights is a right that is created by law, created by law and can be abolished if the agency or the law that created them decides to abolish them. Okay? So, yan ang statutory rights natin. Ano ba yung mga statutory rights natin? So, I think, ano ba yung existing rights na meron tayo that is considered as statutory rights? So, for example, our right to possess a firearm. Yan, that is a statutory right. Hindi lahat ng tao have that right. They need to apply, they need to qualify themselves that they are or they should be entitled of such right, na dapat sila mabigyan ng rights na mag-enjoy ng pag-possess or rights to possess firearm. The same thing with right to own, right to drive a vehicle, di ba? Ikaw ay may karapatang magmaneho ng sasakyan kung ikaw ay na-qualified based on sa qualification na binibigyan ng isang ahensya ng gobyerno. But then, if the agency of the government decides to take away those rights from you, then definitely you don't have anything to say about it because they are the one who had given you such right. So, pwede nilang alisin yan sa'yo. I think it's a privileged right. It's a privileged right. Pag sinabi natin privilege, it can be taken away from you by the same agency or the same body or the same law that had given you such right. Okay, so those are the different classification of rights. We have natural rights, that's the fundamental rights that we have. Constitutional rights, that's the rights that have been given by our Constitution, for our enjoyment as a human being. Okay, statutory rights refers to those rights that are given by laws, and can be taken away from you by the same laws that had given them to you. Okay? So we have here the stages naman of human rights. The stages of human rights talks about idealization, positivization, and realization. Under the concept of idealization, yan pa lang nagkakaroon na tayo ng notion about human rights in the reality of ideas that reflects a consciousness against the oppression or inadequate performance of the state. So we have here yung concept pa lang ng pagkakaroon ng issues, then we start to view it as is. Kasi imagine niyo to how does the concept of human rights come about? So before, we don't have the views as we have right now on human rights, na kung saan dahil sa maraming gerang nangyayari sa mundo, then they started to perceive that they started to view human rights as a very important aspect of human preservation. So doon sila nagkaroon ng idealization na kung saan iniisip nila, I think we should protect, I think we should respect the human rights of each and every individual unless we wanted to be extinct as an organism in this world. So they have the idea of the protection of such human rights, especially the right to life. Kasi imagine mo dati, walang ganun. Ibig sabihin, it's okay to engage into war, it's okay to kill a certain person, it's okay to disrespect the dignity of a certain person, and so on. Then later on, they realize that mali pala yun, that they should make a regulation for this, they should set a standard for this. Then that's the part of idealization. Then after that, after idealization, kung saan iniisip nila the pros and cons of a certain action, and the pros and cons of a certain rights to be accorded to a certain individual, meron naman tayong tinatawag nating positivization. It is where the support for the ideas becomes strong and thus incorporate them into legal instruments such as the creation of the Declaration on Human Rights. Kasi this is the entire process on how we come about our human rights. They started with the idea, then they started with after having such idea, hanggang nung nag-gain na ng support yung idea on human rights, nagkaroon na tayo ng incorporation of such ideas into the legal instruments such as laws, such as declarations, rules and guidelines, and so on, engagement rules, mga ganon. So they already developed the incorporation of such ideas to the different legal instrument. Napasali na siya sa mga batas na meron tayo as a human being. And the good example for that is the creation of yung tinatawag nating UN, or Universal Declaration on Human Rights. Then we have the realization when these rights are already being enjoyed by the citizens by the transformation of the social, economic, and political order. Realization comes about kapag na-enjoy na, ibig sabihin nagbe-benefit na yung mga tao doon sa mga different human rights na nailagay or naipasali doon sa legal instrument or doon sa mga batas natin. Okay? So, let's have an example. So, for example, Juan and Pedro, si Juan and Pedro nag-uusap, they are very influential person, they have the background, nag-uusap sila. I think sabi nila, we should respect the right to life of each and every individual. Dapat huwag nating gawan ng kasamaan na pwedeng ikasawi ng isang tao. So dapat pagbawalan natin ang pagkitil ng buhay. Yun yung kanilang idea. Positivation is kapag halimbawa present nila yung kanilang idea, then it gains international supports from different countries. Yung mga presidente ng iba't ibang bansa, sabi nila, sige, oo nga, dapat talagang ganyan ang ating gawin. So it gains support. Then after gaining support, syempre ang gagawin nila dyan, kung talagang sinusuportahan nila, i-adapt nila yung pinopropose ni Pedro and Juan na concept on human rights, that they should be protected, yung right to life. Okay? Now, after that, kapag sinuportahan nila ito sa pamamagitan ng pagsali ng concept na yan sa mga batas na meron sila sa kanilang bansa, na yun na yung stage of positivation. positivization. Okay? Kapag ito ay nag-a-apply na sa mga tao, yung mga batas, yung mga sinali nila sa batas that protects the human rights of each and every individual, may epekto na, no? Napapakinabangan na ng mga tao na kung saan hindi na basta-basta pwedeng pumatay ng tao, dapat pinoprotektahan na ang right to life ng bawat tao and so on. Then that is already the stage of realization. Okay? And then we have the last topic that we are going to talk about, the sources and foundation of human rights law. Sabi natin, saan nga ba nanggaling saan nga ba nanggaling ang ating mga human rights law? Dito sa Pilipinas, we have here the concept of the 1987 Philippine Constitution, no? Yung constitution natin na yan has been the source of the different rights that we are enjoying right now, no? Yung constitutional rights. But remember that this is not the only constitution that we have. But right now, ito yung nag-exist kasi post martial law constitution that we have. This was created after the martial law, no? Kasi we have a separate constitution when his late president Marcos was in power, no? Meron silang I think 1945 or 35 Philippine Constitution. Iba yung constitution nila. After the EDSA People Power, no, nagkaroon na ng revision on that constitution, on the existing constitution, turned it to 1987 Philippine Constitution. So ito na ngayon yung nasusunod. And of course, with regards to the Philippine Constitution, kasi hindi lang naman maraming nilalaman ng Philippine Constitution natin, ano? But then what's the more important part of that, especially in relation to human rights law, is the Bill of Rights, the concept of Bill of Rights, no? So marami din dyan yung mga rights na kung accorded, like political rights, civil rights, and so on, na napasali sa Philippine Constitution. That's for our country, ano. Internationally, we have yung mga international Bill of Rights, no, such as the one that was created during the National Convention, wherein nag-create sila ng mga tinatawag nating Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, no. Nagkaroon sila ng Magna Carta, not only for women, no, Magna Carta for women, but also for juveniles, no, for imprisoned individuals, yung mga prisoners of war, and others. So, ang kinover ng International Bill of Rights is not only a specific group of each of an individual, no? Hindi lang siya a specific group, kundi a diverse group, no? So, sinigurado nila na lahat ng karapatan is maibigay sa bawat grupo at bawat mamamayan. So, we have different rights accorded to yung mga workers, rights to cultural minorities, rights to women, rights to children, and many more. Okay? Then we also have the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. I think this is the first one that was created. I think this is the catalyst. No? Ito na yung pinakabasehan ng karamihan ng rights or human rights law that we have today. Universal Declaration on Human Rights. Remember that it's a declaration, it's not a law. It depends upon the different countries not to adopt or promulgate their own law. Universal Declaration on Human Rights, together with the Commission on International Human Rights, don't have the police power as other countries have. They only have the power to suggest, no? To remind the different countries and different leaders to respect the human rights, or create or promulgate a law that will protect or respect the different rights of their citizens. Okay? So that ends our lecture for this subject. Our next topic will be more concerned on the still human rights, but then we're going to focus on rights of a person under custodial investigation. I think that's the first topic that we will be talking about in relation to Republic Act 7438. Mahaba-habang topic yan, and that is related na talaga dito sa pag-uusapan natin since we are talking about therapeutic modalities. Before we can proceed about the different therapeutic modalities that we should have, I think it's important to discuss first the fundamental rights of each and every individual para maintindihan natin lalo kung ano or paano ba natin i-treat, no? Paano ba natin i-approach yung mga different therapeutic modalities, which has the aim, of course, to promote the protection of the different human rights of each and every individual. Okay, so that's it for our lecture. Do we have any questions? No, may mga tanong ba, guys? Meron?
None, sir.
Wala? Okay.
None, sir.
And so I will be uploading the recorded of this lecture, kasi baka mamaya nahirapan kayo sa signal, or baka ako yung choppy, kaya i-upload ko pa rin to. I-send ko na lang sa inyo yung link kapag na-upload na. Okay? So I think we don't have a scheduled activity for today, no? Isasend ko na lang din yung copy ng aking lecture sa group natin later on, Yan. So wala nang tanong, guys. Wait lang. Okay, so yan, guys. So if wala na tayong tanong, thank you for attending our synchronous lecture. I do hope you learned something for today's lecture. See you next week. See you sa susunod nating lecture, guys. Bye-bye.